Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
So this is my sponsor, Rachel, who I know you guys have heard me talk about. And in March, I realized that I asked you to sponsor me 10 years ago, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And today we just had I might as well talk about what's wrong with me? Okay, so I could not find the SD card for my camera and I lost my fucking mind. I started crying. Skylar's probably going to divorce me when he gets back from golfing.
No, luckily you married a very understanding, sweet man.
Yeah, luckily. Also, I've sat through him with some bullshit too, you know?
Yeah, you have some of that in the bank.
Yes, exactly. But he is very understanding. But screaming, crying, looking for the thing, can't find it. I have 9.5 years. What's wrong with me?
Addicts are super intense. I always, in my groups, I always tell everyone, look, addicts are the most creative, smart, full of hustle, driven, ambitious, people on the planet. We're amazing. And sometimes we're so intense, we need to do drugs to damper that, that's why.
Yeah. And I kind of haven't had a moment like that in a while. And I meditated this morning. So I've been doing this quantum leap meditation and writing down affirmations and stuff. And I did that today and I still fell apart like that. But that's why I have you. So the reason I invited Rachel back today is to talk about sponsorship. And we've done her full story before in 2 episodes, actually. We've spoken about that time that Chris got arrested, which is so funny now that I know him. I didn't think I would ever meet him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He felt like a lifer to me.
I know.
You know what I mean?
He's literally doing life on the installment plan, and it makes me so sad.
It makes me so sad also. Yeah. Do you think he's going to get arrested again? Obviously. It's just when.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. And you may not want to talk about that a whole lot, and we don't have to, but the father of her child, Chris, was locked up when we met, doing a lot of time for grand theft, attempted grand theft. And I just never thought I would even meet him. But he got out, and I did not expect you guys to get back together.
Neither did I.
But you did. And I didn't think that was ever even I didn't even think that was on the table.
He was just going to stay at my house for 2 weeks.
Right, exactly. And then you guys ended up getting back together.
I know. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, he was helpful.
Yeah.
And smart.
Yeah.
And the father of your child.
Yeah. If he would have stayed clean,
you'd still be together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We would.
And I got to meet him, which I'm actually really happy for because again, he was like this distant figure to me. Plus I know and am very fond of your other longtime partner who I do know well.
Yeah.
Who I know you're not together with right now. But I love him.
But
I have such a soft spot for him.
He's my friend.
Right. I have such a soft spot for Jimmy. Is it okay if we say his name? I'm sure he won't care.
Yeah, he's not going to care.
I love him so much. Every time I see him, even Skylar, Zach lived with him in a sober living once.
I know.
And he was like, dude, he's like the sweetest fucking dude. And you're not expecting it because he's this big guy with all these prisoners. But when he's like, hey, how are you? He's so nice, you know? And I'm always pulling for Jimmy so hardcore. But anyways, so wanted to have you on. We've talked about Chris getting arrested, and then we went over your full story more last time as well. And I wanted to have you on to talk about sponsorship because you know sponsorship and you know recovery more than probably anyone else I know. I mean, I know there are people that know the pages of the big book and stuff like that, but the principles of recovery, when they can be applied outside of the program, you're so good with, because at 9.5 years, a lot of what we talk about isn't addiction anymore. We never talk about drugs anymore, right?
Yeah.
But you've had to see me through the pandemic when I owned my gym and I was flipping out, all sorts of stuff. But before we get into all that, I do want to just do a little brief background because we recently have more listeners than before, so they probably haven't heard your story. So whatever you want to share just up to getting sober.
Okay. So what I will talk about, because I just went to the Ocean Beach Street Fair yesterday.
Yes.
And so I grew up in Ocean Beach, starting at age 14. That was 1989. And at that time, in Ocean Beach, bathrooms were blowing up because people were cooking meth.
Oh,
Like-
shit. In the bathrooms?
Like, yeah.
Okay.
In not like in apartments.
Oh,
you know,
right.
like-
Okay. Not that that's any better, but I was
But,
picturing like
you've
the
heard
public
of-
bathroom at
no,
the beach.
But you've heard of like bathtub meth.
Yes.
Like, that's
Okay.
Okay.
That's when that
the
was
time.
happening.
Yes.
Okay.
And the Hells Angels were the coolest thing. Like I grew up like in a place that was like pretty gnarly, I
Yeah.
guess. All my friends were pretty gnarly. Like,
Yeah.
and today my friends that I grew up with are dead, doing a shit ton of time in
Or
prison.
life.
Or sober. There's
Yeah.
a couple.
Are there a few from when you grew up that are sober now?
Yeah.
Oh,
There
okay. Okay.
They are. We go to punk rock shows together.
Okay. Well, that's good because I know a few of them are doing life.
And so Az is one of the ones that you
Yes,
interviewed.
yes.
And like he sings in a punk rock band. And,
Oh, he does?
with a few of my friends. And shout out to the Brighton Street Bullies.
Oh, is that him?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. His episode actually is wildly popular still, the 2-part episode.
Yeah.
If you guys have not listened to Az's episode, it's pretty good. It's 2 parts. That's cool. You're still talking to him. I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you grew up in that culture. Meth was very baked into your life and culture and kind of in your family too. Like that story, the first time you did coke, I'll let you tell it. Fernando, no. Go ahead.
So probably the worst thing I ever did in my whole entire life is, so my mom took care of her mom when she was dying of cancer, and she kind of like, she had a nervous breakdown, after my grandma died. And so my sister went to live with, I think my Aunt Brenda or something like that, but it was just me and my dad alone. And
I
was
never
like-
knew that, what you just said.
I mean, it
about
wasn't
your
even
mom.
for a long time. It was like
Okay.
probably 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but one day, him and his friend were there, and and I was there, and like I saw some Coke on the table, and so I got a spoon and I took a big chunk out of it. I didn't think they'd noticed, like
How old were you?
maybe 12.
Okay.
And they obviously did notice. My dad did notice,
Yeah.
and thought it was the friend. And I was like in my room, and my dad was like yelling at the guy, and then my dad was like beating the shit out of the guy. And he's like, "Fernando, I swear."
And you
And
didn't
I just like laid there and was like, I'm not gonna.
and you didn't even do it, right? Didn't you just put it in your desk? Or did you do it?
No, I mean, like at that time, like I wasn't doing coke, but I was like smoking weed.
Okay,
and, like,
okay.
I brought it to my friends. And
Oh,
like,
okay.
was
So you
like,
guys did do it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But like that's wild to me. So was he worried about you? I don't think I've ever asked you this. No, he wasn't trying to hide the coke from you. You were wandering around the house and he just had it out.
No,
Like, was he
I don't
trying?
think. No, I mean, he didn't ever like do it blatantly
Okay.
in front of me. Like, and then until after I turned 18. Like, after I turned 18, I did do drugs with my mom and my dad.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
smoke meth with both of them?
No.
Okay,
No. I
okay.
smoked meth with my dad. Like my mom, like in her 40s, kind of like went through this, like, what is it called? Like midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like our house was like the party house where,
Okay.
like
Okay.
I did acid with her and my stepdad. And then my stepdad called my mom a bitch. And I punched him in the face. And he was in a wheelchair. And like,
When you punched him, he was in a wheelchair? Oh my God.
but somebody was like, "Oh, you suck." And I was like, that he knew he was in a wheelchair when he called my mom a bitch.
Oh my God. I've never heard that story either.
Yeah.
My mom kind of went through a little midlife crisis too and got super cool for a few years.
Yeah.
When my dad left.
Yeah.
But not doing acid with your daughter.
Yeah.
Cool. But like she was smoking cigarettes and
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It was like a little bit different. But that's one of the things that is so interesting, I think, about our dynamic is you would think we're so different. Like because of our parents, right? Like
Yeah.
the moments we've had where I know this is the example we always give, where you were like, you know how like when you're a kid, your mom will say, quit crying or I'll give you something to cry about, you know? And I was like, no one ever said that to me at all. And I remember saying to you once, this is gonna make me sound like such a fucking brat, but I remember saying to you once, you know how like on your 16th birthday, your mom like checks you out of school early so you can get your license so you can drive your new car the next day to school, you know? And you were like, no, that's not a thing. And I was like, oh, I told my mom that actually.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, she's right. That's not a thing. And I'm like, well, it's like so funny. All those, like the differences with us, but then the way that we've been able to connect anyways, which is some of what I want to talk about in terms of like looking for a sponsor. But so that was the first time you did Coke and the Fernando thing. Like, I'm sure that, how did you feel about that? Did you feel guilty and bad for that guy? What do you think your takeaway was from that?
Well, I was 12 years old. Right. And when you're 12, like you don't have a lot of, moral aptitude.
Right. Yeah.
But looking back, like that was like a pretty shitty fucking thing for me to do. Yeah. But I was 12 and like.
That wasn't shitty of you to do. You were 12. You didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Come on.
But I think, stuff like that made a difference, like, in my, like, because I know that like when I was using, I never felt like a piece of shit when I was using until after I had Hannah. Okay. But like up until the point that I had Hannah, like I had a really strong moral code.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the same as everybody else's,
Okay.
Like,
do you think that's because in your world, using drugs was just part of the norm because you saw your parents do it? So, because like for me, and I think a lot of people, using drugs was the moral diversion, right? Off the path I wanted to be on. But I can see why for you, it wasn't, because that was just part of life.
Yeah.
So you didn't feel bad about it because it's what you saw everybody do around you.
Yeah. And everybody's parents.
That's so wild to me. Can you imagine now? Hannah's 17, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I couldn't. But like me and Hannah have like a really good relationship.
You do. You do.
And she, like I don't lie to her about it. She knows pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And
you know what? I also don't want to judge parents because I also understand. I got really tight with this chick once whose son was a heroin addict also. Mm-hmm. He was like 23 and we were both addicts and he was living at home and he was also disabled somehow, not mentally, but physically. He was like in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And they were both home and she could tell he was dope sick and she didn't know he had been using. And he didn't know, she thought, that his mom was a heroin addict. But he probably knew because she'd been in and out of prison. But like she'd been out for a long time. And, she said, I know it sounds awful, but like I felt so bad for him. Yeah. Like he was really sick. You know what I mean? And like it is my son. And I remember saying, we're going to have to get a hold on this, but I don't want you to go out and do something stupid. Like I have dope if you want to smoke some or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, really? And she was like, yeah. And like hearing her say that. So I don't want to like put judgment on parents that, you know what I mean? Like,
I know.
You know what I mean? Like I don't want to do that, obviously. Yeah. But so how did you escalate from that to, and again, guys, if you want to hear the whole story, we've done episodes with Rachel before. I want to talk about the charge that you took for the guy. So how did you, this was your first arrest, right? Mm-hmm. So how did you get there?
No, let me see. I'm trying to think. I don't think that was my first arrest. That was my first
term
conviction.
Okay.
That was my first conviction.
Okay.
There'd been other times when I'd been arrested and like, it just didn't, like I didn't end up getting charged or whatever.
Okay.
But actually, this totally relates. Just recently, I I'm doing my practicum, for college or for, grad school. And like part of it is that you work, for like a county place for a year for free.
Right.
And they do a live scan on you.
Right.
And and all of my charges, came up and like they're like, okay, well, you need to explain each one of these charges. And like they just gave me this printout and like none of it like said exactly what the, I couldn't even like recognize what. It took me a long time looking at it to figure out like, oh, this is a date and oh, this is, this is the, case number or whatever.
Right. Right. Okay. So how many times did you get arrested? Like how many things were on that sheet?
So I went to jail 6 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I went to jail 6 times.
Okay.
I have like more charges than that.
Right.
But most of them, like I have some like other misdemeanor charges that I didn't go to jail for. And when I say I went to jail 6 times, I'm talking about like for a turn, like for some time.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Because
what were
I've
the
been
ranges
arrested,
of
I've been
times?
arrested other times where
Also,
I
if
only
it's
stayed.
easier,
Oh, I
you
only
can
stayed in
rest
jail
your
for.
elbow
Oh,
on the.
that's good.
Yeah, that's the trick I told Kevin. Yeah, yeah. 'Cause these things get fucking heavy, huh?
Yeah.
I need to get a mic stand. But anyways, okay. So what times ranged from like a month to 9 months?
Dude, I wrote it down. I think I did 180 days.
Damn, that's 6 months.
I did 212 days, 50 days, and I think 24 days.
Okay, that's
So-
longer than I knew. I think.
Yeah.
I think I thought you only did that one kind of longer one. And what is the practicum that you're talking? Kind of update people on what all that, like everything that you've done schooling wise. So you went back and got your undergrad and then your master. Like walk us through that.
Okay. So when I was at Choices,
Yeah.
I found out about Eric Clapton had a rehab. It is in Antigua.
Yeah.
And it's in the Bahamas. And I'm like, I want to work there. And you have to have like their drug counselors are therapists. So they have master's degrees.
Okay.
And like I found out that you have to have a master's degree to work there. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
So when I went back to school, like, you know, like I had maybe a year, almost 2 years clean. I went back to school. I went to community college. I was in community college for 3 years. I was in Cal State San Marcos for, I got my AA, I got my BA in psychology at Cal State San Marcos. And then right now I don't know if I should say where I'm at. No, and it doesn't matter. Like I'm at the University of San Diego
Okay.
in a master's program.
Oh, I thought it was a PhD.
No, not yet.
Oh, but you're going to do that.
Yes, that is the end game. That is the end goal.
Okay. And
is the
how
end goal.
old were you when you went back to school?
I think it was like 39.
Right.
39.
And that's one of like the coolest parts of your story, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk about what you had to do and describe it and all that stuff. Or I guess you could read it now. Basically, I just want to go over the story of when you got busted and took the charge, because the picture I kind of want to put together is how different you are now with some of your attitudes from like living that way and being in that environment where it was very like gangster mentality, right? And not that you're not a gangster still.
I am not. You know what?
Okay, we can say that?
Yes, we can say that.
All right, okay.
There's two, like literally, have you ever seen that movie Alpha Dog?
Yes.
Okay, so before I had Hannah, that girl tells on the friends that killed the kid. And
Oh, I'm thinking of that movie where they sell weapons overseas with
no,
Jonah
it's called
Hill.
Alpha. It's called Alpha Dog, and it has like Justin Timberlake in it or something
Okay,
like that.
I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about. It's about Jesse, that kid that
Yes.
they kidnapped. Yeah, I
Yes.
know what you're talking about, but I
Yes.
haven't seen it.
Yes. Okay. Well, one of the friends tells, one of the girlfriends tells on that guy.
Okay.
And I was like, when I watched it, I was like, you rat bitch, that's not going to bring him back.
Right.
And then I watched it after I had Hannah and I was crying. I was like, the mom needs to know what happened to her son.
Right. Right.
And that is like when I knew I'm a
Right.
mom now.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
not a
mom
gangster.
now.
You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, and there's been so many other things along the way too that to me show that. So walk us through when you got arrested and what happened that day. You guys all got busted. How old were you? And it was a Hell's Angel deal, right? How old were you?
I'm guessing 28 years old. I think I
Okay.
was like 28 years old.
Okay.
And, it was like a simultaneous raid. Like, it's all over the, it was in 2003.
At multiple places. It was like a
Yes.
federal indictment raid.
Yeah. And I literally grew up like believing in certain things and, like absolutely believing in certain things that this is the way that you act. This is this is what you do. This is what you don't do.
Right.
And I had been dating a Hell's Angel for like, I don't know, 6 years or something like that. And basically, if you're an old lady and you don't have a record and the cops stop you, whatever, and usually you hold the drugs anyways, but you say the drugs are yours. And like, I didn't realize that when they have a federal indictment, they've been watching you for like 2 years and they have like phone taps and like, all this. I didn't know that it wasn't going to make a difference.
Oh, it didn't even make a difference in his sentence anyways? Oh my gosh. Okay.
But, like there was lots of other girls who had been, at their boyfriends' houses and they just didn't say anything and they didn't get arrested, you know?
So wait, when they came in to arrest all of you guys, You're all like laying on the ground. Like, when do you say it's mine?
Well,
it's
by that
mine?
time,
How does that happen?
By that time, they, you're on the ground for a minute, but then,
Right.
then they handcuff you and let you sit on the couch.
Okay.
And they were like coming out, like, what's this? And I'm like, that's mine.
Oh, Rachel. Oh my God. Was he just sitting there watching you do it?
Like he couldn't stop
What
me,
you do. Right.
Like,
yeah.
really,
Yeah.
like, to be fair, like his drugs, like I had already put those up inside me. And like the drugs that they found were like my little squirrel stashes.
Okay. So they were kind of yours.
They absolutely were mine.
Okay. Okay.
So, whatever.
So wait, you stashed shit inside you? I don't think I knew that. And they took you to jail right then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that was like the fucking worst. All the times that I've gone to jail, like I generally do not use drugs because
Yeah.
it's like, it's fucking way too much. Like
Right.
it's just stupid.
To be high and locked up, you're saying, especially
To be
on
high
meth.
and locked up and all the stuff that you have to go through. And
Right.
like, dude, I was in Las Colinas because that 24 days, or no, I don't even think that was the 24 days. I was like probably in there for like 4 or 5 days, but we were at Chow and like, I was paranoid the whole time.
Yeah.
And I I broke off some, like I had a lot of drugs.
Yeah.
And I gave some to the Mexican girl, like the main
Yeah.
shot caller for
Yeah.
the Mexicans. And then I gave some to the black girl.
Yeah.
And then we were all high and we were at Chow and there was like all of us not eating and like 2 fat girls with like 3 trays of food. I was like, this is so fucking obvious.
Yeah, dude. So how did you because I brought a pipe in once and although I guess that's different with a pipe, you have to cough and they strip search you and the pipe started to like shoot out of me. I told this story recently and I pushed it back up inside of me. Did they even come close to finding your stuff? Or you were in San Diego, so they took you straight to Las Colinas, huh? Because I got to go through Vista Holding.
No, they took us to this place on Arrow Drive. Like it was a big fucking thing.
Yeah.
And they took us to this, like they had like all this like stuff set up and like, like they had all this stuff on tables and they had the news there, to like
gosh.
show like what,
bust.
yeah, it was, and we were like sitting in these buses, like.
Yeah. So no one found it, I guess, is what I'm asking. Did anybody strip search you or anything, or they just put your gown? Do you even remember? Obviously not, because you got it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that whole like coughing thing, like I don't think
It hit me. So, but I think it was because mine was a pipe.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, a pipe is like aerodynamic, right?
Yeah.
And so when I sat on it, I did it in the back of a cop car, and it was bowl down, stem up, and I just slid down onto it.
Okay.
But the bowl was at the bottom. And so I've never thought about this, but now I'm thinking
like
with
you
the
didn't,
weight
you
being
didn't, yeah,
heavier.
if you were doing it in the back of a cop car.
Yes.
You didn't have it like
Right,
where
exactly.
It, needed to
It
be.
probably wasn't up that high. But then I was in holding with it for like 12 hours before they sent me to Las Colinas. But when I coughed, it started to shoot out. And I stood up and just pushed it in really quick and turned around and was like, I'm fucking freezing. Can I put my clothes on? So like I came close to them seeing that. But I guess if yours was a bundle and it was up really high, there wouldn't have been any. Do you remember how long it lasted you while you were in there?
I was only in there for 3 or 4, like 4 or 5 days. Like I did get bailed out.
Oh, you did bail out.
I did get bailed out.
Who bailed you out?
My boyfriend's dad.
Okay.
He kind of like knew. I mean, there was like some things that happened that were just, we knew. Like everybody kind of knew.
That you were going to get busted.
Yeah.
Okay.
He
okay.
like went and gave his dad $5,000 to like, in case something happens.
All right. Okay. But you eventually go to jail for that. What did you eventually get charged with? And then what was your sentence from that?
So they charged me with possession of narcotics with intent to distribute. Right. Okay. So basically, and like with intent to distribute is like if you have a certain amount.
Right.
Like that's, like that's beyond personal use.
Yeah, you couldn't possibly do that much. So I'm like, you don't know me then. Maybe I could.
But basically, possession with intent is less than a sales charge. It's like still super bad, but it's less than a sales charge because like a sales charge, they need to like find baggies and a scale and like other things,
Okay.
And what ended up happening is like I didn't go to jail immediately for that. Like pretty quickly, or maybe a month or 2 after that happened, like I went and stayed with like some of the people in Reno and like like for 3 or 4 months. Like I went on the run. I was like super parent. Like I had my sister's ID and I was dancing and I was so paranoid that like the bail bondsmen were going to like, come in and like find me.
Yeah. I didn't know you went on the run.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were already dancing by then. When you were with that Hell's Angel guy, you were stripping.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was when we met, and then like kind of made me quit, like kind of like pressured me kind of, and like we got into this fight, and I was like, all right, fine. I want to buy something and we can't afford it. Then I'm going to go back to stripping. And he said, he's like, fine.
Right. Okay. So then when he's in jail, you start dancing again.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then you go on the run to Reno for a few months.
Yeah.
And then you eventually
come back and turn myself. I come back and
turn
turn myself in.
Okay. All right. And then how much time did you do?
Okay. So actually on that one, I think I did that maybe 50 days.
Okay.
And then it was like 50 or 24 days. I can't remember. It was one of those two.
One of those two. Okay.
And then they said, go to jail for a year or go to a program. And that's when I went to Choices.
Oh, and that's when you went to Choices for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay. Which was like one of the best things that ever happened to you.
Yeah.
Because we both got to meet this wonderful, amazing man named Steve who ran Choices, who owned Choices, and loved Rachel so much. He's so, I think, important in your recovery story. I mean, he's like one of the primary reasons you got and stayed clean, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, when I talk about him, like when I'm doing groups and stuff, I call him my mentor, like, cause he is.
Yes.
He was like, he made recovery look cool, and he had all kinds of crazy stories, and he would tell his crazy stories and, and when he was doing groups.
Yeah.
And, I knew he used like I did, and I knew he wasn't full of shit.
Totally.
I knew.
He did make it look so cool. It was so fun, and he was so funny, and he played the guitar, and meeting him and going to Choices completely changed my ideas around what recovery was. Yeah. So you go to Choices, you don't stay sober forever.
No.
And the reason I want to kind of, and again, not to like blow through this, because we've gone over this in other episodes, I want you to tell the rat dope story. Because that's so it's so crazy to me that you quit heroin that way. So just talk really quickly about how you ended up on heroin, because you were primarily a meth addict. But at some point as you get older, you get strung out on heroin also. And then there's this rat dope thing. And then there's also Hannah in the mix somewhere. Yeah. So where is all that?
Well, so I had never shot up before I went to Choices, and
not even meth either?
Not even meth.
Oh, okay.
I went out with the Hell's Angel. Like, you're not allowed to use needles.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What are their rules? Are you allowed to say?
You know what? I try not to.
Okay.
Because that's not a part of my life anymore.
Okay. Okay. I asked somebody I think that from SCRC yesterday if he wanted to do the show. And he was like, I do. Because he brought it up. He was like, you're so insightful with your podcast. He's a Southern guy. And you might start to figure out what this is. And I was like, thanks. And I said, you know what? Would you want to do it? And he said, and he was like putting his helmet on next to his motorcycle. And he was like, I mean, I can't really say a lot, though, about like my family and and then he like said some things really quietly that I couldn't even hear. And then I remembered, oh, you're a Hell's Angel. I fucking forgot that part. You know what I mean? Or he was, and I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, if I can figure out how to navigate it, I will. But like, I don't know. And I was like, don't do anything that you don't want to, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But like same thing, like he didn't really want to talk about it either. And his family is still involved, it sounds like. So he didn't want to get into it. Yeah. But I didn't know that was a rule that you couldn't use needles.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it just takes you so out of control?
Yeah, because it makes you, because once the orange caps show up in your life, dude, nobody, I don't care who the you are not the same person.
Right.
And I will tell you the rat dope story. The rat dope story is that, and that actually had to do with meth. I did quit using heroin, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the rat dope story was, there was this chick. She had the best fucking dope, okay? But she was a rat. And I remember, like, I would not get dope from her, but I would get dope from other people who got dope from her. And I was like, dude, I'm still doing rat dope.
Yeah.
And, it just, like, even then I could understand that I compromise my morals when I'm using drugs,
Yeah.
you know, because of drugs, because I'm like an addict and drugs are the thing that's most important. And the reason why I quit using heroin, but like meth, I can, you know, like I can still, when you're coming down from meth, you like need a nap and a sandwich. Like it's
Right.
not the same thing
It's not the same
as
thing
being
as heroin.
sick,
Yeah.
you know, and like when you're strung out on heroin, you do not want to get sick.
Right.
I remember just putting up with this chick that was like so like any other time I just would have punched her in the face,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, she was like just a prima donna and a fucking lame, really.
Yeah. Keep going. I'm just checking to make sure.
And I was just putting up with her because she happened to know she could get some heroin that,
Right.
and you know, like at that time. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this, dude, fucking heroin makes you just absolutely, you know. And also, when I get sick, like some people, like Hannah's dad, when he starts getting sick, he goes into like super gnarly hustle mode, you
Yeah.
know. I just try and never run out, you know, like
Yes,
I'm
me too.
always in super hustle mode so that I never run out.
Right.
But once once it gets to a certain point, I will lay on the floor, curl into the fetal position and just
Right.
cry until somebody brings me some heroin.
Me too. Me too. And it's a horrible place to be. But you were actually able to stop. So you realized, I remember you telling me around that girl, you were like, you are a weak ass bitch on heroin. And you just kicked it on your own, right?
Yeah, but I was doing meth.
But you were doing meth, right? Yeah. But still, because of that thing. And then I think the reason I love the rat dope story because that was like a rock bottom for you. And that's so crazy to me that just that mindset was a rock bottom to you. And it shows where your psyche was at then and how different you are now. Cause I remember you telling me, I think I must have asked you what your bottom was or one of them, you know? And you said, dude, I was doing this rat dope, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, rat dope? You mean like rat poison or something? And you're like, no, like a snitch, dude. And I was like, oh shit, I would have done rat dope any day if it was good, you know? But like, you had those rules and you've evolved so much since like that version of you. So I want to talk a little bit about sponsorship with you. And I've got all these questions that I sent you earlier because I kind of found you by accident a little bit, right? Like,
you know what I feel about accidents.
Right. Well, me too. That's what I mean. Yeah. So then how do we tell someone to like, let that happen, right? So like the first moment we met, I know you remember this. So I'd been to Choices once before and I was going back a second time. And the intake coordinator when I went the first time was this chick, Monica. And we had the same birthday and the same my original clean date, still hers to this day. But like I just like, you know, I liked her and I thought she would be there when I went back. And I remember showing up looking rough. I still remember what I was wearing. I was wearing a dress I stole from Walmart. And I had not a purse. It was like a Victoria's Secret gift bag that I was using as a purse. And I remember standing in Steve's office and going through everything. And I had like
so many foils.
Needles.
Okay.
Yeah, no, needles. I had like 30 needles, like 30 fucking rigs. And I remember you were like, what would you do if you got pulled over? And I said, I don't have a car. And I was like, where's Monica? And you were the new intake coordinator, right? Yeah. And that was like the moment that I met you.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, and I'm so fucking grateful for this, you took a shine to me. You liked me.
Yeah.
And no one had liked me in a very long time. And like you invited me to go places with you. And like, you know, you had to bring like a road dog if you went on a trip somewhere. You know, you had to bring somebody else from the program and you would invite me and we became friends. And then that woman, Monica, was my sponsor. I got kicked out of Choices. I want to tell that story too. But I get kicked out of Choices and I went to Monica's program and she couldn't be my sponsor anymore, right? Because she worked there.
Yeah.
And so I remember saying to you, I wish you could be it, but I know you've only got 9 months. And then the next time we spoke, you were like, oh, Debbie said I can be your sponsor. And I said, oh, okay, cool. And I had no idea how fucking monumental that would be to my life. You're the primary reason I've been successful in sobriety. I believe that. And that was such again, not an accident, but I was like guided to you. How did you get guided to your sponsor, Debbie? I mean, obviously I know what happened, but how did you end up with Debbie, your sponsor?
So that is so funny because Steve Bogard was doing a group, and he would do these groups, and he would do it in a way that you thought he was talking about you, only you, and he was talking about, like why hookers never get sober or some shit like that. And after the group, I was like, look, what you said, like, hit me right here, but I don't know what the to do about it. And I asked this other lady to be my sponsor, and she said no. And he told me, he's like, why don't you ask Deb?
Did you know Debbie?
She was the assistant director the first time I went to Choices.
Okay, but she wasn't there the second time, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah. My very, very first sponsor was at that program. It was this chick. I got up to step 4 with her.
Okay.
She started telling me a little bit about like...
Okay, this is a good story. Tell this story. This is, again, part of the whole thing that's changed. Tell the story.
So she told me, like when you share your 4-step, like your sponsors share some other stuff with you.
Right.
And she was telling me how, she had this boyfriend, and it was like a hostage situation.
Right.
Kind of like a hostage situation. And she's like, so I called Crime Stoppers on him. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this,
right.
Like, I don't think I told her right then, but like after, like the next day or something, I called her. I'm like, look, you can't be my sponsor anymore.
Did you say why? And by the way, guys, Crime Stoppers is essentially she told on him and told people where he was located. Right.
Yeah.
So did you tell her why?
Probably I don't think I told her why.
Yeah.
I don't think I told her why. But in my mind, like, this is the thing. And this is really important. And I tell everyone, like, if you don't have a sponsor that you can do business with, find a different sponsor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because you need, this person is going to help you in life. They are going to, and if you don't have the same general, like Debbie's super gangster. Like she is a little short white lady that was a heroin addict from Detroit in like 1980.
Yeah. Yeah. Super gangster. Yeah.
And I trusted her. Like I trusted her. She wasn't going to tell me some dumb shit.
Yeah.
She always told me real shit.
Right.
Totally. And like I wanted to call her. I wanted to, like when I didn't know what to do, even now when I don't know what to do, I call her.
Right. Yeah. And you have 11 and a half years, right? Coming up on 12 in December.
I'll have, in December I'll have 12 years.
And she's been your sponsor that whole time.
Yeah.
So I found you kind of by magic, right? You found Debbie kind of by magic, right? Steve gave that speech. You asked him about it. He connected the two of you. What do you think someone should look for in a sponsor? Because what you often hear is find someone that has something that you want. But I don't love that because you were living you weren't in sober living by then, but you were living at home. You did have a car, which I definitely wanted. But I don't know if a newcomer is far enough to do this.
When I asked Debbie to be my sponsor, I was still in Choices.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying when you became mine, there wasn't when they say find someone who has something that you want, I would want a mansion and all this crazy shit. I just think it makes it a little bit more material. But what I think is helpful to look for, find someone who has an attitude that you want. You're very zen and very calm.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know that about you. Again, it was an accident. So my recommendation would be look for someone who acts the way that you want, someone that's confident or calm or whatever. What would you recommend someone look for? But then also you got to hope this little miracle happens. So if someone's listening right now and they have 30 days and they want a sponsor and they don't know how to find one, what would you say?
I always tell my guys, I always tell, whenever I go to H&I, whatever, everyone.
Yeah.
Your sponsor is going to be the most important relationship that you're going to have in your recovery.
Yeah.
Hopefully. You need to find somebody who, you've seen the 12 steps. I'm sure you've picked them apart and you have these things about them that you don't like or doesn't make sense to you or,
Right.
Tell those things to your sponsor, Debbie, got me through a lot of, I hated God. And
did you?
I did.
I didn't know that.
Or I hated God and I refused to admit that, God existed.
Okay.
And one of the things that Debbie said was look, you can be mad at someone, but they exist. If you're mad at them, then they exist. You can't be mad at something that doesn't exist. So you got to pick one.
Right. Were you mad at God?
Yeah, I was mad at God. There's, there's been, you know, like I grew up with a lot of fucking shitty,
Yeah.
you know, my mom told me quit crying and didn't tell
Right.
or I'm going to give you something to cry about.
Right.
Another thing is like, I've always been able to like be in both worlds kind of, you know,
Yeah.
like, so
You still
growing up, I was like in like GATE programs, like gifted and talented education. I was really, really smart. And, you know, not in my neighborhood, but going to like other kids' houses, like that were in school with me.
Yeah.
Like I saw like how they lived, you know, like it wasn't how I lived.
Yeah.
You know, and by the
Yeah.
time, you know, by the time I'm 38, like there, you know, yeah, I've got lots of fucking resentments
Yeah.
about, you know, like, goddamn, like you gave me like gifts and abilities and like smartness, but didn't expose me to any of the ways that I could fucking, like utilize them or, you
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah. So how did you get past that
how did I get past it?
to like work with a higher power during those steps? What did Debbie say and how did you work them in your early recovery when you kind of still felt that way?
Because she never fucking gave me any kind of like stupid bullshit, you know, like, oh, just believe that I believe, you know, like none of that. Like, I don't know if I've told you the story before, but I was super strung out on Xanax.
Yes.
And I had been doing like 6, 8, you know, I literally would not keep more than 10 Xanax on me so that I wouldn't do more than 10 Xanax.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I was going down to Mexico to get them, you know, like, and I had never kicked and I didn't know what the kick was like.
Yeah.
Well, I found out,
Yeah.
you know, like, I swear to God, it was like 18 days. Like, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say I went 18 days with zero sleep, but I went
not
18
much.
days with like fucking barely any, like,
Right.
you know, I would lay in bed all fucking night long, just thinking about things and like not being able to go to sleep. And then the fucking house manager would wake me up, or I'd just be like chain smoking out in the backyard
Yeah.
and the house manager would come outside and like be like, it's past curfew. And I'd
Yeah.
like, you know, pull my middle finger out of my pocket and be like,
Yeah. Was that Marcella?
it was.
Okay.
It was.
Who we both like now. you know?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I remember I told Debbie, I'm like, look, I am going to fucking leave here, or I'm going to stab someone, or I'm just going to fucking stab myself. Like, I just, you know, like I was too much, like I was absolutely desperate, you know? And she was like, well, have you tried praying? And I was like, how the fuck is that going to help? And she was like, well, how's it going to hurt? And I was like, well, you got me there. So I like got on my knees, and like, by the way, I do not get on my knees anymore because I don't believe, like my higher power doesn't want me to get on my knees.
Okay.
But you know, that was the AA stuff that,
Right.
you know, like that you do or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I got on my knees. I'm like, okay, Sky Daddy, being, you know, bearded Sky Daddy, like if you know, or whatever. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly, but I was being super
But you had the
sarcastic.
attitude with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, if you want me to fucking stay here and if you want me to stay clean, then I need fucking 2 hours of fucking sleep tonight. And I got about 2 hours of sleep that night. And it doesn't fucking matter if it was really my higher power, like granting me that fucking 2 hours, or if I was just so fucking desperate that I fucking, you know, was open to like a different, you know, something different, you know, like a different, because really the 12 steps give you a different perspective on life. You know, it allows you to see life in a different way to where everything doesn't suck. You have, you know, you have agency, you know, like all these things that start believing when, you know, when we're using drugs, like just like how I remember you like speaking like one time and you were talking about, because you did have like every fucking advantage in the world. And at that time you thought everything sucked and, you know, you were unable to be grateful for any of it.
Right. But when I was younger, before I started using. Yes, exactly.
And like today, like you're grateful for, you know, like it allows us to be grateful for the things we have, you know?
I love that idea that the 12 steps give us a perspective shift about life. Kevin actually said that a few weeks ago, that a miracle is a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a burning bush, whatever.
Yeah.
And I love that idea because exactly what you just said, becoming grateful for stuff was a shift in perspective, and believing that my addiction was a good thing and not being so embarrassed. Like all of those things are shifts in perspective that are literally like miraculous, and they make the quality of my life better, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really the goal. But I love that the 12 steps give you a shift in perspective. So what do you remember at that time? Did you wake up the next day and think that worked? So did it slowly make its way into your brain that maybe there is something out there? Because like that just worked for me.
Well, Debbie, she didn't say that I'm just going to have blind faith. She said all these things are going to help you realize, like see how, like your higher power does exist. And learning that there's no coincidences,
right.
Learning that people speak through, like the universe or whatever you believe in, like uses other people to like puts people in your life
right.
that buy you a car when when you're early in recovery, or a sugar daddy who like sends you to rehab.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. So how did you work step 2 and 3 early on? Did you just write the stuff down even if you didn't fully believe?
She told me, so for step 2, she told me every day, write down ways that you can see your higher power working in your life or someone else's life. So I was literally looking for good things. I was looking for good things. I was looking for little miracles. I was looking, and those things are all around us. Totally. Those things are all around us when we're using, but we're not looking for them.
Yeah, totally.
Because we don't notice them because we're just seeing the bad shit that's happening.
Right, right. And that really worked on you.
Yeah.
Okay. The way that we do step 2 is my favorite step because of that. Same thing. I was so broken and angry and just dead inside that I did not believe there was anything good left in the world. And my step 2, I remember at Choices, like I started seeing that there was beauty in the world again. Lewis bought me a California burrito at like that one of those taco places on Store Run.
Yeah.
And I remember eating it and being like, dude, this is the best burrito I've ever eaten in my life. Cause I'd been like homeless and starving. And like that day, that was God for me, or like, you know what I mean? Literally like my higher power showing up like in this amazing food that I now have. I remember Hobbit took 60 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that kid getting 60 days is a miracle. And that allowed me to also start to like see the good again and just sort of like start to come back to life. So that's how that worked for you with Debbie.
Yeah.
What are some of the most impactful things that she said to you, or moments when she helped you like realize something or see something?
I'm trying to think but I mean, in the way that she got me to come around with the higher power.
Yeah.
Because it's like I did have, and not only did I have like resentments against like God, but I had like serious resentments against like religion in general.
Okay.
Like I would rock like 666 and like, like satanic stuff just to like make those people mad and just to like, get a rise out of anyone around me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Even my own friends were like, what the f***'s wrong with you?
Right. So that was huge with her.
Yeah, it was. It was. And, she explained that in my addiction, I was turning my will in my life over to the power of getting more drugs.
Right.
And so, and like she explained to me that like, cause I do believe in like physics and math and science. And I believe that everything that exists has an opposite.
Right.
And,
okay.
So if I've been turning my life, my will over to this, whatever dark power,
darkness,
then then there must be something opposite to it. And, in the beginning it was just like meetings and the program and my sponsor and, like the goodness out of that's coming out of that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And my spiritual awakening is definitely of a educational variety.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. What does and I know this is a hard question, but like, what does your higher power look like for you now? And how do you access that? Do you have any sort of meditation routines or journaling routines? I don't actually even know the answer to this. Like, do you do anything like that? Or how do you keep that conscious contact?
Well, I'll be super honest. Like when things are going great for me, I don't meditate in the morning. I don't, I don't do those things that I'm supposed to do. But when I start to become restless, irritable, and discontent, then I start doing that shit again. And I'm an addict. I'll fucking do something for 7 weeks every single day, and then I won't do it one day, and then I won't do it for 7 more weeks, or 7 months. Who fucking knows?
Right. When you do meditation, what do you do? What do you use?
I usually just do like a little like meditation timer, or like meditation
just, like, breathe
sounds
and
like on my
listen to
phone.
music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do that like in the beginning of a lot of my, like I run group at a rehab and, I do that a lot.
Okay.
And, I always like talk about how like when I was using, I couldn't stand to be sober for 1 single second. And, in the morning, and like I wasn't savor for the morning.
Right.
And I would run across the street and like get some hard liquor, like
you did?
those little like airplane
The
bottles.
little thingies?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
When you were shooting meth and eating Xanax towards the end,
If I had
you
nothing,
would drink in the morning.
if I had nothing, but that was literally just to get me to drive to the Connects, or
Totally.
like I had to shoot meth or heroin in order to take a shower.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So how would you, I started to ask you this and I think I took us off course. How would you recommend somebody look for a sponsor? If you've got 30 days and you're going to meetings, what do you think somebody should do to try to find one?
So you need to ask questions. You need to ask questions about
that's
like
right,
the way that they do the steps.
Okay.
You need to ask questions about like,
What if you
how
don't
they
know
present.
anything though?
If you don't know anything about,
Like the steps and stuff. Maybe you're just looking for their attitude too, the way they talk to you. That's important.
yeah,
You know what I
it
mean?
needs to be somebody that you vibe with, somebody that you're
totally.
like, this person's cool.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. For me too, it really mattered that, and I don't think it always does, but for me, because I was such a gnarly IV addict, shooting in my neck, the whole thing.
yeah,
I think it was going to be hard for me to connect with a woman in AA who'd gotten like a DUI
Yeah.
and was,
Yeah.
a little off the rails. And again, that isn't necessarily true, because now I know that the problems are the same, even if the details are different, right? Like the overarching
The
themes
feelings are the same.
The feelings are the same, yeah. But it was really important to me that I feel like the person also had the same kind of like super gnarly story, and you did. And through our friendship, I started to learn that, and so that was important for me too,
yeah. No, it was also important. I mean, yeah, you need to like find somebody that you vibe with.
Yeah.
And if you need to vibe with somebody who like, and yeah, AA ladies and Encinitas, of course they can recover,
Right.
Like I would listen to some lady talk about how she like sometimes how she felt so bad about driving her kid to school drunk. And I'd be like, you drove your kids to school?
Yeah. Totally. Right. Exactly. And for me, it just needed, I just needed that, like, that was a huge thing to me too. So you say, ask questions, see if you vibe with them,
Yeah.
try to communicate with them.
Yeah.
The benefit of sponsorship for the sponsor. Because we know what the benefit of sponsorship is for the sponsee, right?
Yeah.
What would you say it is for the sponsor?
Okay. So for one, like when, I'm an addict, I'm selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, like all those things. And really what it is like when you are completely directed towards yourself, like you don't get to get the benefits of like, being of service and like you're just completely focused on you. And so
Right.
like you focus on all the shitty things about you and all the
Yeah.
when I'm helping someone else, when I am kind of going through it and you call me and you have an emergency, like I get a reprieve
Yeah.
for 20 minutes from my own issues or
Yeah.
whatever I'm going through. you
Yeah.
know? And it's like I cannot deny that it's super good for your ego. Like, I remember you asking me, if I want to be your sponsor, and I
Yeah.
was thinking, what the f- does this chick think of me? Or,
Really?
like, yeah, I was thinking like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why would she think that I would be a good sponsor?
Right. Yeah.
But it was still flattering. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, I f***ing have somebody that somebody wants. Or,
Yeah.
I have something that somebody wants.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I think at that time I still did have a sugar daddy.
You
and I
did.
was-
You saw it
and
talk.
I was living in sober living.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
know.
Totally. Actually, since you brought that up, I kind of want to touch on that briefly too. The whole because you had a sugar daddy your last couple of years using, and he paid for you to go to rehab
Yeah.
and stayed in your life. He was at your sit-in.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
He was at your sit-in, and your boyfriend was there too, right?
No, my boyfriend wasn't there then. My boyfriend wasn't there then.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think there was probably guys that I'd had sex with
Okay. In that room.
in that room.
Well, I'm trying to think of. There was one at least. Okay. So that sugar daddy really helped you into recovery.
Yeah.
But at some point you decided this isn't part of the way I want to live my life, but it was really hard for you to give that up. Will you talk a little bit about that process? Because you relied on, as you put it, every job you ever had was involved
Yeah.
you taking off your clothes.
Yeah.
You relied on that as your primary form of,
That was my hustle.
that was your hustle.
Yeah.
And you gave that up sober like a year in. Like, what was your reasoning behind that?
So that was actually something that Debbie helped me with. Like,
Okay.
and because growing up, I did not want, because like you have a boyfriend that's a dealer or something like that.
Right.
Like it's like constant you doing what they say. So I would, like in my mind, like
Okay.
I would rather suck somebody's dick for 20 minutes or whatever,
Yeah.
and then come away with $500 and then that person is not going to tell me what
Okay.
it's over.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to have these strings over my like I was going to be able to pay for my drugs, like
Right.
and, and myself.
Right. Okay.
And I had boyfriends being a prostitute,
Right.
like
Did any of them know what you did?
there were times when they did,
Yeah.
and then there was times when like I was just telling these like ridiculous lies about like
How you had money. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or I would tell them, oh, but we're not having sex. They're just,
Okay.
because that's a huge,
Right.
everyone lies about that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
They're just giving me
They're just
money
giving me
because
money
I'm
to
so hot.
to hang out. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So
I mean,
you have
I'm
Tom.
not saying that never fucking happened.
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
few and far
It's
between.
few and far between. Right. Yeah.
So Debbie helped me like understand, like I had compartmentalized like this is work, this is love, and just, Debbie helped me like see like, help me like work through like sex is, or like when you sell sex, then you cheapen it kind of, like you do.
Right.
And there's no fucking way that you could like really, especially when you're clean, be in love with somebody and like, but also be having sex with someone else.
Right.
And the thing that she like, it was so cool because she's so cool.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, well, I remember, because she was talking about me having sex with Tom and having a sugar daddy. And she was like, I remember, I was working as a bartender and I was stealing from the till and I kept telling myself, oh, but I have to do it, because I told Debbie, I'm like, I can't, what if I can't tell him to kick rocks because what if I need money?
Right.
And really it was like the opposite. Like he was there. So I knew I could just spend spend a bunch of money on stuff that I want instead of paying my
Right.
rent.
Right.
And, like it was the opposite
Right.
of what I was scared
And
of.
she was sober, saying that she was stealing money from
Yeah.
the till, right?
Yeah.
And so, what did she say about that? What was her like?
She just said, like you have to let that go, and
It's not sober behavior or emotional sobriety.
she didn't like do it
Right.
in a judging way.
Right,
Like,
right,
she
right.
just literally, she said something about you just have to trust that your higher power is going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And so I did and broke up with him.
What was making you not want to still have him as your sugar daddy? Now we're like a year into your
Because
sobriety.
I fucking was 100% in love with Jimmy, and I
Right.
didn't even want to do that to him anymore.
Yeah.
He knew.
He knew.
He knew
Yeah.
about Tom, and he like, but it fucking tore him up.
Oh, it did. It bothered him.
It bothered him a lot,
Okay. Okay.
But I had like broke it down, like,
Right,
like
you got all
this is
these
what's going
reasons.
on,
Right.
like before we even started dating, I
Yeah.
broke it down and I was like, this is what's going on. Like you can either accept me or not.
Okay.
And that's literally how, like once I started like, I don't know, probably, like late, eventually, like that's literally how I was,
Yeah.
with everyone. I was just like, look, this is what I do. If you can't deal with it, then get on.
Right. Right. And eventually Jimmy had a problem with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
or you honored
he
that
didn't.
he had a
He
problem
didn't
with
like
it.
tell me stop doing that.
Right,
He,
okay.
like it bothered him. I could tell
Right.
it bothered him, and I
Yeah.
was like totally in love with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I broke up with him, and like knowing that like I need money, and so Tommy was going to get me a job at the Home Depot.
Home Depot. Yeah.
And
this is Tommy, the bank robber, guys, that we're talking about.
and
Who's been on the show?
and Kim March saw me like filling out an application for Home Depot, and he went in there and told Alice like, look, if she starts working at Home Depot, we are going to lose her.
So by now she worked at Choices. So that's kind of what we're talking about. You worked at Choices.
Yeah.
And Kim, one of your bosses, saw you doing that and
Yeah.
said, we'll lose her.
Yeah.
Okay. And they gave you a raise, right?
They gave me a raise.
Yeah.
Like I was making $200 every 2 weeks. And then they gave me a raise to like $2,000 a month.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it was, and like that,
Yeah.
that showed me that
Right.
my higher power is going to take care of me.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, like, I mean, $2,000 a month is not a lot, but it was.
But you were
fucking
also
enough.
still living in sober living too. Or by then you maybe.
No, by then I think
moved
by then
out.
I had moved. I moved
Okay.
in with my mom. I
Okay.
had moved in with my mom.
Okay. But still, it's significantly more than $400 a month. You know what I heard recently that I like? So I've always hated that saying, trust the process. I hate that saying. I think it reminds me of Fabi said that to me at FRC when I wasn't able to do like the work search program. And, you know, I was always just trying to go back to work
Yeah.
so that I could get out of whatever rehab I was in.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, trust the process. And I want to be like, no, your process is this dumb program that doesn't care about like whatever. I flipped out. I've always hated that. And I heard something recently that kind of changed my mind. Like if you stay in shape, you don't have to get in shape. And your consistency is the process. It's your process, not an outside process. And I thought about that in terms of recovery. If we stay, like you were working really hard at that job, you were showing up in every way,
Yeah.
you could trust that process because that process was built on your consistency. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I feel like if I look at it that way, I can like trust the process because that's why it worked out for you. You had shown them for 6 months or whatever, what a great job you did. And so you were able to trust the process of recovery, which was the next step for you in your personal evolution and growth was to stop having a sugar daddy.
Yeah.
And the process did like fill in, you know?
Yeah.
Isn't that a cool idea that it's our consistency?
Yeah.
That's the process. It's not an outside process I have to rely on.
Yeah.
You know, like if we're showing up and doing the things,
Yeah.
then typically things will work out like they did for you again,
Yeah.
you know, recently, you
Yeah.
know?
I think you asked me, what is my conception of a higher power?
Yes. Yeah.
So my conception of a higher power, like definitely has a lot of like, but in step 11, Debbie told me, go explore religions and go explore, you know, higher power, go do those things. So I did research and went to, you know, different like the Buddhist temple and all this
Okay.
different stuff. And I think like my idea is that all religions are a little bit right and a lot of it wrong. But I do believe that there's like this energy, you know, like I believe in the Big Bang. I think that God exploded himself into a million f***ing different pieces and made the universe.
Okay.
And so God can experience every single thing that's going on all at the same time.
Okay.
And like every single thing that's alive has a tiny little spark of God.
Yeah.
You know, but we're all connected by like whatever, like that, all that energy that is God is in ourselves, you know, like we're all the same. We're all made of the same thing.
Yeah.
And like, I do believe that like, if you're like going with the flow or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, because they talk about like getting in your own way.
Right.
Like if you're like connected to the flow of like the goodness in the universe,
Yeah.
then things are going to work out for you,
Yeah.
you know, like when you don't have ulterior motives and you're just, you know, like living as God wants you to be. And
Right.
like, and I think about that also with like how Hannah, like, you know, God's my, you know, like we're children of God or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I think I just want Hannah to be happy. Yeah. I have pretty much, you know, given her all the, you know, like the knowledge I can.
Right.
And like now it's up to her.
Right.
But I want her to be happy.
And that's kind of your conception of how God is with us too.
Yeah.
Like we've been given what we need.
Yeah.
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 I love that idea that we're all connected. I think I kind of agree with that too, you
Yeah.
know? So like when you have something come up that you need to pray about, because I know you pray a lot, that's what you're kind of like reaching out to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I think Debbie explained to me that like meditation is listening for God, listening for the answer, you know, like because, you know, you have so much like noise in your brain.
right.
Like the only way to like get rid of that noise is like through meditation. And then you can like find, you know, because
Right.
the answer is there, you know, like
Yeah.
it's just, we can't see it, you know, just
Yeah.
like good stuff is out there. We just can't see, we're
Right.
just not looking for, you know, when we're
Right.
using, we're not looking for it.
Right. Something else Steve said that I love about higher power is, and that's why I love our 11 step where we do all of that research. Like we try different things and we
Yeah.
like get to know a higher power, so to speak. And
Yeah.
he would always use whoever was in the room that he knew really well. He would say like, he would say to me, he'd say, I don't know you that well. Like, I don't know how you're going to respond about this or that, but Will, that was the example he used that day. Will was there. He was like, Will, I know Will really well. Right. So like, I trust him to give me good information. I trust him to give me good advice. I've developed a relationship with him.
Yeah.
And so you have to develop a relationship with a higher power, like seeking that out, like doing the journaling, you know? And I always thought that that was really cool too, like as a way to like develop that. Do you have a favorite step?
I do not have a favorite step.
Okay.
But I think 6 and 7 are really important. And I feel like people like gloss over them.
No, no
like,
one's
way
ever
too
said that,
much.
I don't think, on here when I've asked.
Really?
No, I don't think so. So why do you think that?
Because, because I guess because I've worked in treatment
Right.
and people complete all 12 steps and they're like completely, you know, like unaware of like stupid shit that they're doing.
Right.
That's fucking them over, you know, like even though they're sober.
Yeah.
And when I did 6 and 7, like we didn't just gloss over it. Like, you know, like, okay, so I thought that 6 and 7 were the same thing. And
Right.
Debbie explained to me that no, 6 is becoming aware of your character defects. And 7 is once you already know what they are. And like, because we're human beings, we still do it anyways.
Yeah.
Then you ask God, like, hey, I can keep doing this, even though I
Yeah.
know better. Can you help me out?
I like
Help me out, bro.
Yeah. I like putting it that way too. Like, even though we know what they are, we're human beings. So we do it anyways. Cause like, I'll get down on myself for continuing to do it anyways. But like, we're human beings.
Yeah.
That's why we do that.
Yeah.
And so the 7-step prayer is like asking for,
Some extra power to, you know, like,
yeah. Okay. So you ended up, like I was saying, you've had a complete evolution in life, right?
Yeah.
From like the rat dope
Yeah.
to, I had somebody DM me on Instagram recently and say, I told on some people. Now I feel really bad. And like, I don't really know how to feel about it. And I had no idea what to say. I was like baffled as to what to say back. And so I asked you, and I was like, not that I actually thought you'd get mad, but I was like, dude, she hates this shit. I don't even know what she'll say. And you did kind of, you were like, oh, you know, I don't remember exactly what you were like. She told you that? And I'm like, yeah. And I don't know. And then you said, well, you know what? Like, she might have saved their life. You know, maybe she saved their life, and you could tell her that, or, and, you know, and I did ultimately say that. But that's a complete switch from I'm not doing rat dope to like, you can have a soft answer in response to that. How did you evolve from that like gangstery mentality to the person that you are now with those different ideas?
Yeah. Well, one, and Steve Bogard used to say this all the time. Like, there are certain things, like when you grow up a certain way,
Yeah.
that it's not going to go away for, you know, like it's never probably going to go away.
Right.
There's certain things that, you know, like my first instinct or my first, you know, it's just like, you know, I remember I was with Jimmy and we were like at a hotel. He was like, he was in a treatment program. And so he had a pass, and we were at a hotel, and we ran into this chick that he was using with.
Yeah.
And like, she was on a sick one.
Yeah.
And I remember, and she was like saying shit that like was aggressive. And I was thinking,
To you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, do I need to fight this chick?
And this was kind of recently, right? Yeah. Like a couple, yeah.
Yeah, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, and Jimmy was like, you know, he was like, come on, let's get in the car, you know. Like,
Could he kind of tell that was happening?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was pretty fucking gnarly. And you know what? Like, all the girls that I grew up with are pretty fucking gnarly.
Right.
And like, and my attitude is like, I'm small and I'm little and it doesn't matter. I'm always usually going to lose. But what matters is that you fucking give it your fucking best try.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't, you know, like, don't get punked.
Right. Yeah, totally. And in that moment, though, obviously you didn't do that.
No.
So how
No,
did
because
you
I'm a
get
grown
there?
fucking woman,
Right,
and
right.
this fucking tweaker chick, you know,
Right.
like, no, dude, I don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
You know, like, what's the fucking point?
Right.
Like, I don't need to be respected by this chick.
Right. That's true. So do you think you got there just based on like time, maturity, age?
Yeah.
Step work,
course.
probably part of it.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
And you know what? Like, I was thinking about that. You know, like, even the people that I know that still do drugs have like mellowed, you know, like mellowed out a lot. They don't want to
Yeah.
go back to prison.
Right.
You know, like, it's like life beats you down a little bit.
That's true.
Like, you're
That's
way
true.
different.
You just get
than-
like tired as you get older, you know? That's totally true. Okay. So last couple of questions.
okay.
During COVID, I lost my mind, right? As you know, I owned the gym And when I look back on that time, I feel like I lost myself so much during those years. I was so stressed out about money, which, as you know, is like the hardest thing for me to, like, my biggest struggle is fear of economic insecurity.
Yeah.
Right. And I already kind of felt shitty anyways before the pandemic. Like, I was already really afraid because I owned the studio for like 6 months before that happened. And I was so stressed out. Like, and I knew it would be difficult, but it was way more difficult than I realized for me to not know exactly like how much money was coming in. So then pandemic happens. And in California, owning a gym, there were a ton of regulations. And they start talking about these vaccines and wearing the mask. And I've been a long time liberal like you. And I started to get really bitter about all of that stuff and listening to like all these conservative podcasts. And I didn't go down like the QAnon conspiracy route at all. But I was really angry about all that stuff. And you were very much in favor of and support of the masks and the vaccine mandates. And I would call you and scream about that stuff and cry. And you never put your opinion on me, but I knew that that was how you felt. It would come out. It comes out. Like, you can tell how people feel. But you always made me feel a million times better, right? Like, anytime I called you, I would feel better about whatever it was. How did you manage that time when you felt so differently from me, right? Because like, I'm sure that happens with sponsors and sponsees sometimes, like there'll be an issue that you guys disagree about on a fundamental level, but you still have to help them manage those emotions. How did you deal with that during that time?
Yeah, well, I think probably this is why I am studying to, or, want to be a therapist, is because like we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the fucking same boat. And like, you were a business owner of a gym and losing thousands of dollars and paying rent for the space that you weren't allowed to use. Like, of course you felt that way.
Right.
But I also work in healthcare and I knew like how many people were like catching COVID. And I knew that like some people, nothing happened to them, but some people get really sick and die. So like everybody's doing the best they can. And like nobody knew what the was going on during COVID.
So you were able to have empathy for my situation, even if we disagreed on like the details.
Yeah. And my political disposition has nothing to do with the steps. It has nothing to do with, like, like I shouldn't be giving you advice that has to do with my opinion. I tell you what the book says. I tell you what the print, like I try and help you see like how we're supposed to look at it. And it has nothing to do with like whether I like Bernie Sanders or,
That's true. That's true. And you would always bring it back to like step one. It's out of your control.
Yeah.
Right. Much of it with the business. And so you would always like bring it back to that. And that to me is like the coolest thing about having a sponsor. And, a lot of the listeners aren't necessarily in 12-step, but like even just having a mentor somehow, having someone that isn't you give you an alternate point of view is just so helpful. Like I remember another time when Skylar was using, I called you and was like, I think he's not just an addict. I think he's like a sociopath. Remember that? And I was like, because he got extradited once on like a murder charge from Florida when he was 22. And he's going to come on the show in a few months. I think he'll be willing to talk about that. And he didn't do it, obviously. Some lady got killed during a home invasion.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, maybe he killed that lady. He's a fucking sociopath. And you had the exact same reaction. You started laughing and you were like, Janine, everyone when they're using is a sociopath.
Yeah.
But like someone else, like Jana, would be like, oh, I think he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because she's not in recovery. Like other people would be like, no, he's totally a psychopath. And then in the reverse too, we got in a fight once. So he took out all these check cash loans, right?
Yeah.
And he had like, I don't know, 6 weeks or something. All of our savings gone. And he comes home and he's like, hey, I'm going to make $100 payment to one of the check cash loans place because they were really nice to me. And I was like, and we owe like thousands on our power bill. And,
Yeah.
you know, Tank needed some stuff. And I lost my fucking mind that that's what he wanted to spend money on. And he called his sponsor. He took Tank for a walk and he called his sponsor, which is not something he used to do. And when he came back, he was like completely different. And I think I asked him, did you call Steven? And he said, yeah, I did. I said, what'd he say? And he said that he was like, well, you know, you shouldn't yell at me, but it was out of line to ask.
Yeah.
That's why we have a sponsor. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, thank God. Now he's got somebody to bounce ideas off too. And I've told him that. I'm like, dude, she usually defends you. You know what I mean? But that's also what I want. Like, that's also what I want. I don't want someone to be like, no, he's a piece of shit. You know, like, and that's why having somebody in recovery is just so important.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, pain pills in recovery. I think. So I've had to do it like 3 times, right?
Yeah.
As you know. And you recently had to.
Yeah, I got my appendix out.
Exactly. So, but there's like a lot of, I was just listening to another episode this morning of another recovery podcast. And the co-host died after getting injured and taking pain pills. And he relapsed and died. And the host was interviewing Dr. Drew. And Dr. Drew, who I normally really like, was like, I see this all the time. My colleagues, you know, prescribe pain pills to addicts and it takes them out. You should never do it. But like, I disagree with that. Are we supposed to be in pain? But then how do you manage that? Because I've now had to do it multiple times. And I hate that shit. Like when I was having all those stomach issues, I was in mortal severe pain.
Yeah.
And no one cared. You know, it was awful. Like that was going to make me use. You know, or I have another friend in recovery.
Yeah, because you know how to make it stop.
I know how to make it stop. Also, like, there's something so shitty about not being believed.
I know.
You know what I mean? And another friend of mine, they didn't want to give her
Especially
pain
when you have
meds,
fucking
having a
8 years
baby. Right, exactly. I own a business. I had 8.5 years going to see that doctor. You've seen me for years. You know I'm check my Instagram.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, look at my social media. I'm clear. So, you know, what do you think about that though? Because I know there's just a lot of like.
Well, just there are doctors on both, like doctors don't know a whole lot about addiction unless they're an addiction specialist.
Right.
And there's some doctors that are like, no, absolutely not. Like I've read books about like people getting their teeth pulled out with no anesthesia.
Yeah.
Like that's
crazy.
Insanity. That's
crazy.
Insanity.
Like, should we have to suffer?
No,
but I think you just have to
not.
be smart. I gave my pills to my mom every time.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there's IPs that say we do not have opinions on that shit.
Okay.
We don't. We shouldn't.
All right.
Because
that's fair.
That's not for me to tell someone else.
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
You and your sponsor and your higher power figure it out together.
Yes.
You know, and like what I have seen with people taking pills is they didn't tell anyone.
Right.
They didn't.
This dude didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
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 He didn't tell anyone. That actually is a perfect segue into my last question, which is what you just said. You had a sponsee once who took LSD, right?
Yeah.
And was telling you, I don't consider it a relapse because it was for my spiritual growth and development or whatever.
Yeah.
And at first you were kind of like, okay, bullshit, whatever. But then you spoke to Debbie, who said, no, she's right. That's actually up to her, not you. Explain that a little bit, because I think most sponsors, especially around, I shouldn't say especially around here, I'm sure this is everywhere, they'll overstep that a little bit and say, you know, I remember arguing with Steve about this once, not Steve Bergard, other Steve. Someone had accidentally, whatever, on a cruise, taken a sip of a not virgin drink. And they didn't even have to tell anybody, but like they did just in a story. And he lost his mind and wanted to kick him out. And he was asking me what I thought. And I was like, you don't know if they thought it was an accident or not, man. Because he was like, come on, give me a fucking break, la, la, la. And I was like, no, but you don't know. You don't know what their intention was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have no idea. So, but what is your thought process around that?
Well, it has to do with your intention. Like, are you taking it to get loaded? And yes, you need to be super careful. That's why you need to talk to your, that's why you need to work it out with your sponsor. Because if I'm just only consulting myself, I can absolutely make it sound so spiritually motivated. Yeah. Or whatever, like, there are people out there microdosing or doing like whatever. Yeah. Whatever. Like that's up to you and your sponsor and like figure it out. And like, because if you have accountability, then it's probably not going to get out of control.
Right.
You know, like
That's true. That's true. I used to kind of want to microdose like mushrooms and stuff. I've asked you about that, but I don't anymore.
Yeah.
I don't, you know what I mean? I don't want to
I'm pretty
feel.
sure I told you it's probably not a good idea.
Well, no, what you said was you were like, okay, but what's the context? There was a psychiatrist in San Diego who did sessions with you. It was like a therapist, and you went to their office, and it was like a whole part of like counseling. And I told you that, and you're like, I mean, okay, like if it's that, okay. But as long as you're not buying them from like some chick on Instagram and just like dosing yourself therapeutically, you know what I'm saying? Like that would be different.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I got on some waiting list that was like a year long for the dude. Mm-hmm. And this was years ago. Yeah. And I never heard anything back. And at some point I was like, what am I doing? I don't want to do that. Yeah. And a friend of ours, I'm not going to say, I'll tell you off air who it is, a good friend of ours, a funny young friend of ours, was going to microdose mushrooms, and he accidentally took like, it was supposed to be microdosing mushrooms, but it wasn't. Uh-huh. And he tripped like really hardcore for, 15 hours or whatever. And he said it was like the worst thing that ever happened to him in his fucking life. And now he never wants to do it again. And was so terrified and scared that he's like, I have zero interest in microdosing anymore. Jeannie, seriously, like once you've been sober, if you lose your faculties, it's the worst. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, I don't want to do that either. You know what I mean? Okay. So last thing, I know I keep saying that. You had to, as briefly as you want to explain this, to get into your program, like you mentioned earlier, they live scanned you. Yeah. And your old records came up. Yeah. You have 11 years and they almost weren't going to let you into your practicum to get your hours because of these old charges. Yeah. And it's one of the only times I've seen you actually like pretty concerned about something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you really believe things are going to work out, and I don't. But you were pretty concerned about this. What did you have to do, and what ended up happening with all of that? Well,
so a live scan. Okay. One thing that I do want to say is in California, like we're really lucky in California. In California, if it's been past 7 years, like it is not going to show up. It's not going to show up like for private entity.
Okay, like an employment background search,
or an apartment background search. Okay, like they ran a background check on me like when I moved into that apartment, and nothing came up. Okay, but live scan means the Department of Justice takes your fingerprints and they look up every single thing that ever happened. Like even if you had it expunged, even if it was a juvenile record and it was sealed, it's going to come up. Okay. The DOJ has access to everything. Right. And so, yeah, that stuff came up. And then they asked me to do, there's a process where you can like get a waiver or, an exception. And the thing that I was worried about was that I didn't think that they were going to approve me, because like literally all my charges are being on drugs, having drugs.
And this is for you to be a drug counselor, right? So,
well, yeah, I mean, I am a drug counselor.
I mean, more than a drug counselor, but you know what I mean? Like the master's is in this exact field. So you figured you can't be the first person. I figured you can't be the first person with a record.
The doctor that's supervising me, like she's not like a medical doctor. She has a doctorate in psychology. Right. When I told, I was like, I'd send her an email. I was like, I didn't really want to tell you like this, but this is what's going on. And she sent me, and I said, I hope this isn't going to jeopardize my position there. And she was like, your unique perspective makes you an asset or something like that. Right. It was like super cool about it.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Other people at my school were like, oh, you should probably like figure out if you're even going to be able to, and if you're going to even, if you're wasting your time. And I'm like, but throughout my whole life, people have told me, oh, you might be wasting your time. Well, you.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to use my addict.
Yeah.
Like determination.
Wiles. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they said
kick down the door.
Yeah. So they said you could appeal it.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah, but it was taking a long time. Yeah. And my, my class started already. Like it started 3 weeks ago. And if it, I also talked to my advisor. Everyone at my school has been so supportive. Yeah. And I'm, again, so blessed and like so grateful for like the people in my life and like, you know, like my work, like, you know, I mean, I couldn't ask for a more like supportive network, like not even just in recovery, but just in my life. And it's funny, you're like, oh, well, I've known that usually things work out for you.
Yeah, I did tell you that. It's true. It's totally true. And I think it's one of the only times I ever had to say that to you. You know what I mean? And not you saying that to me. But it's also scary. You know what I mean? You don't know. Like, I could understand why you were concerned. Also, your first appeal letter, they didn't accept, right? No. You had to do it a second time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I can't remember all the times that I've been
no
arrested.
one can except me.
And the well, no, you're not the only, like,
okay.
I've done a lot of Xanax.
Right. Right.
And
it's true. That's a good point.
You also tend to be one of those people, like my sister has done lots of drugs also.
Yeah.
But there's something about her where if you do something f***ed up to her, she can remember what you said, what she said, what color shirt you were wearing, what day of the week it was, you know, and she tends to hold on to shit and be like pissed about things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even without the drugs, like I tend to let things go, you know, and like, I remember even like in my addiction, I would like tell, you know, like, cause I can't remember what you did, but I can remember you're no good.
Yeah.
And I would tell someone like, no, that person's no good.
That's
and they'd be like, why? What did they do? And I'm like, I can't remember. I just know. There's actually a Maya Angelou quote, which is people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. That's for benzo addicts, dude. You can trust that shit. That's really funny. So you couldn't remember the details, but they demanded the details. Yes.
So how did you reconstruct it?
So one of the things was they were like, okay, we're gonna apply for the arrest records. And so when they said that, I like went down to, you know, San Diego Sheriff's Records Department, like in Linda Vista or something, you know, Kearney Mesa or whatever, the very next day and applied for them all. And then they sent me back, like they said, after 3 years, like the records are destroyed. They don't keep the arrest records. So like, unless you fought your case and like you got discovery or unless it like became case law or something like that, then no, it does not exist. And the Hells Angel one, they just gave me an outright denial. They're like, there's certain, you know, because there's certain, they said this is not public information and we're denying, you know, like we don't have to give it to you, so we're not gonna. And then for the one where they busted Chris, which was also like a pretty, like, you know, he had been doing some stuff, like they denied that one also. But for 3 of them, they gave me like the call for service. And so I was able to like kind of, you know, deconstruct like this is okay. I can remember this.
Yeah.
And
so someone nearby called 911 and that's what you got to see?
No.
What's the call for service?
Call for service is like, okay, so one of them was like, you know, I got busted like in Oceanside. Like it just said some FBI agents called for backup because they had somebody in custody for a misdemeanor like warrant. Like, you know, there was this time that I was, you know, at a friend's house and he was being raided by the FBI. For a pretty, you know, for like a conspiracy, you know, drug charge.
And you were just sitting there?
I just was there and I had a warrant now.
Oh, fuck. Okay. And that jogged your memory.
Yeah. That jogged, you know, that jogged. And like 3 of them were already, you know, like 3 of them were like the ones that, you know, like they did have the call for service and like, you know, and then the other 3, I was like, oh, I know in this, you know, like, and I figured out what the date, you know, like there was some numbers, it was the dates.
Oh, okay.
But it was like 2008, 02, and then there was like a bunch of 0204, and then there was a bunch of other numbers after it. And I was like,
the f does that mean? Yeah. Okay. So you were able to put it together.
Yeah.
And you wrote them a letter and sort of pled your case.
Yeah.
And they gave you the waiver, right?
Well, it was taking a long time. Yeah. And like last week, you know, because I had already gone to like 2 weeks of school, you know, like everyone else has started at their site and I haven't because as a matter of fact, like when I gave them the news, everybody clapped. Because I don't, even at school, I don't keep it a secret. And, you know, there's like this like new movement about like not being anonymous. And I'm like, I'm kind of with it, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I get why they don't want, if people say, oh, like, you know, AA saved me or NA saved me, and then like they relapse later, then, you know, people are the public or the general, you know, like
Yeah.
everyone else is going to think, oh, that shit doesn't work.
Yeah.
But
You know what my argument to that though is? Maybe I've never told you this. That would be like if your neighbor Maria, who's a retired school teacher, bought a Peloton and posted on Facebook, I love my Peloton. I just hit my 100 rides. I've lost all this weight. I love Peloton. No one is going to look at that and think, oh, Maria must represent Peloton.
yeah,
She must work for them.
yeah,
You're not going to think that.
Yeah.
And then if you see her in a few months and she doesn't look as good anymore, you're not going to think, wow, Peloton must not work. You're going to think she must have quit riding that fucking Peloton. That's what you're going to think. You know what I mean? And people are more, and also we have,
that is such a good
isn't that a good analogy?
Yeah.
I know. And we have a lot of empirical evidence now too to show that that doesn't happen, because how many famous people that we know go to AA have relapsed, and like the institution still stand. Like Dax Shepard talks about AA all the time, and he recently relapsed maybe like 3 years ago, and we're fine. AA continued.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
So people do seem to know. And I also, though, get it too. I do love 12 steps so much that I don't love ever like being in a position where someone feels like they have to tell me I'm doing something that could damage the program. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I kind of get it, but at the same time, keeping it secret wasn't helping anyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyways, go ahead. So the thing about being anonymous at school, you're not anonymous at school.
No, I'm not.
Right.
And because I feel like there could be someone in your life at any time that here's what you have to say.
Totally.
And they need the program, or
Totally.
they need your help, or, you know, whatever.
Right.
And plus, like, I'm not ashamed of like any of the, you know, all the things that I went through
Right.
made me who I am today.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty awesome person.
Yeah. I also heard somebody say this recently. It's a program of attraction, not promotion. So if we are just talking about it and we seem like we've got our life together, people could be attracted to that and go to the meeting. We're not saying like, I'm not promoting an event.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or promoting my home group.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fine kind of line. But
Yeah.
So anyways, you write this letter and it's taking a long time. And when do you find out it's resolved? Recently.
So I emailed this lady, like, because I had a case worker, I had an email, you know, like on this letter, and I emailed the lady, and I was like, I used ChatGPT to like say it in a nice way. I said, please say this in a nice way.
Yeah.
But basically, look, lady, the same day that you told me that you were applying for the police reports, I also applied for them, and I got replies 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And then she emailed me back. I don't know what replies you're talking about, you know, in quotation marks. And she's like, but I'll, you know, like our process is we ask for the records, we wait 15 to 30 days, we ask again. And then if they continue to not give them to us, then we subpoena them. And I don't know how this is what she does all the time. And she doesn't know that after 3 years, the police reports are, you know,
Right.
but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever. Exactly.
Then she sent me another letter that said, no, she said, I don't know what replies you're talking about, but I will call him again today. Then she sent me another reply like a couple hours later that was like, the records have been purged. Congratulations. I'm going to grant you the thing. Here's your letter. Your site's going to also get a letter.
Okay.
So yeah, it took footwork, and I was persistent. And like throughout this whole entire thing, like 80% of the day, I'm cool. I did the footwork.
Yeah.
There's, you know, like I don't have any, you know, there's nothing I can do that's going to affect the outcome. I just need to let it happen.
Right.
But 20% of the time, I'm like, God damn it.
Totally. Yes. Yes. That's the hardest part of recovery to me.
Yeah.
Doing the footwork, but letting go of the results.
Yeah.
It's the hardest part of life to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But you did get it. And like I said, it did work out for you.
Yeah.
As it always does. Dude, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And thank you for sponsoring me. Are you sure it's not? I would think it would be really difficult to sponsor me. No. You're the only person that can. I was freaking out today. I have 9.5 years.
No.
Okay.
One last thing.
Okay.
Because I thought that was like the most beautiful question. Like, you're like, also, why is it that other girls hate me and you didn't?
I saw that and I skipped it but I just don't want to take up too much of your time. But I do actually want to ask you that. And I'm glad you brought it up because like my biggest issue in life, they've heard me talk about it. Not my biggest issue, but close. These women hate me after a few years. Why does that happen to me?
Well, look, Janine, like my personal hypothesis or whatever about your particular situation is, I think you kind of, like you want, it's like immature girls kind of that like, I guess, I don't know, like, like, because it's immaturity. I went to a show, like a punk rock show, like, and there was a bunch of chicks that I didn't even know. And they were like super nice to me, like we were all getting in the pit together and it was like really, it was awesome. And I was talking to my friend Dan about that. And I was like, dude, they were so nice, like that's not normally how it goes down. And he's like, I think after, women are like in competition with each other. And then like after a certain amount of maturity, they like realize that they, like need to like hold each other up and like we're on the same team and like, and one thing that I think is so rad, and maybe it's just, maybe it's like you lose your insecurity and like you realize like, and you live the steps, like you put out what you get, but Hannah and like her generation are so awesome, like all like women power. And
I will give Gen Z that for sure. Yeah. They're also really cool about cellulite, which I love. Those girls don't give a
No.
And the boys don't either.
Thick thoughty.
Yeah, they don't care at all. Booty shorts with cellulite at the gym. They don't give and I love it for them. Yeah. Because the guys seem to go with that too. And I would hear guys like talk about cellulite like it was bad. And now I'm like, what an idiot that dude was. But anyways, so yeah,
well, that's because that is something that's like important that I kind of want to talk about is like, it's like, I'm not skinny, but I'm not fat.
Right.
And I would, and at 50 years old, you have to starve yourself if you want to look like the ideal whatever, you know. And I am not going to starve myself and I'm not going to be skinny and miserable. I'd rather be fat and happy.
Right.
But I work out and do things that I, make me feel good, and I got my little Apple Watch and it like encourages me every day.
Yeah.
You can do it. Yeah. You can close all 3 rings.
That's so cute. That's so cute.
And we grew up in like a different time and where we're just constantly being like brainwashed by it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we did drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. So you think it's the choices I'm making and friends that's why that happens sometimes. Because you did call out a good pattern of mine once, which is that I always want to be in like the cool girl group, which is true. I always do.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm always like right on the edge of that where I'm like the Lindsay Lohan and Mean Girls where I'm not really in it. But at the same time, I also don't want to like disparage any of my, like the 2 friends I lost last year. They're like pretty great people. You know what I mean? I think that's why it hurts me so much, you know? But you've never disliked me and you know me really well.
I loved you the minute I met you.
I don't know why. With my like blood clogged needles everywhere.
Because you were real, you know, like you were real. And and it is like, it takes vulnerability to be like, when you're a drug addict, like, like you just have to be real. Like you can't beat around the bush. You know? You can't get your needs met if you're just going to be like hinting things.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, you've always made me feel better about that over the years, because I remember one of the times I called you, I was like, well, if I had to guess, they probably think I'm selfish and self-centered. If I had to guess, and you were like, you're not, how many times have you given me free classes to your gym when I'm complaining about not being in shape when you're, the studio is broke or whatever. And you would like name all these things I did that were nice. And I'm like, thank you. I did do that. You know what I mean? But, I don't know.
And you are amazing. Like, dude, lots of people did lose their businesses during COVID, like you did the footwork. You went around town and delivered, spin bikes to every, to people and like did all the things, like you turned, you hustled.
Yes. We did.
You could have just lied down and been like,
Yeah. We did hustle.
This sucks.
I credit my addiction for that actually. Yeah. Because we had such hustle in the face of extreme duress.
Yeah.
Because I've had to get well.
Yeah.
Many times, you know, as like a homeless person.
Yeah. You recorded, like did Zoom
All those
meetings,
on demand. Yeah, totally. Yeah, we did do that. You said you wanted to talk about like weight stuff, it sounds like.
I do. You know what?
That was
like,
a big thing.
One of the things, like, so, because I'm a tweaker, okay? Like, when you do meth and heroin, you are like so underweight,
Yes.
you know? And like, we think that we look so good.
Yeah.
Because we do. We're model skinny, which is malnourished.
Right. Right.
And I remember like my mom like threw a surprise birthday party for me, like when I had almost 2 years clean. And I looked at the pictures. I guess she only had pictures of me like, you know, when I was high.
Yeah.
Because like as soon as I got sober, I stopped taking pictures of myself because, you know, like I dealt with all that stuff. Like I had those insecurities. I, you know, like I remember Debbie one time told me, she's like, too bad you can't just eat makeup and be pretty on the inside or something like that.
Yeah. Lewis said that to me too, actually. That's hilarious. Yeah. The house manager at fucking Big House. That's so funny. And it's true.
Yeah. Because beauty does fade, you know what I'm saying? And, and like the saddest thing in the whole world is someone who like, you know, I've seen it like in the strip club is someone that like, that's all they have is how they look because when they, you know, eventually they don't have what they look like. And if they're a fucking bitch, then nobody can stand them.
Right. So how did you saw the pictures?
Yeah. And I looked old. I looked older than I look now.
Yeah. You think?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get through that? Because obviously it stuck with you. That would have been a long time ago. How did you?
I just started like loving myself more, you know, and like realizing that like, dude, it isn't the way, like the way that I look is like a very small part of me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And when we get sober, like when I first got sober, I gained so much weight. I was like 160 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
And because, I fucking needed sugar constantly.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, but, you know, as I got sober, like I, you know, started like taking care of myself and like, you know, caring, like when you take care of your mind, body, and spirit, all those things, you know, like
kind of fall into place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. That's a really hard one. I remember Monica told me when she was sponsoring me, I was talking about the same thing. And she was like, look, in recovery, first your body goes like this. And then it goes like this. And then it gets or no, she said addiction, you go like this. And then your body goes like this. And then it goes to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
You'll settle in.
Yeah.
And something about the way that she said that was actually quite comforting, even though it wasn't like super helpful. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like a diet. I was like, you know what? That rings true for me though. You know what I mean? I'm sure that's true. Was there anything else you wanted to like?
I think that's it. That's it.
Thank you so much for coming over.
Yeah.
And loving me through my insanity.
Oh.
Hopefully Skylar comes back. He will. I was so upset. Well, because I'm also like, I'm in this transition period where I really want to do this more.
Because
you know what I mean?
You're a perfectionist.
I am.
And
I am. You're right.
Yeah.
And I really discovered that recently when I was doing that other show too.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have thought of myself as a perfectionist, but like all the little editing mishaps and you know what I mean? I'm like, if we say it's going to go out on a Tuesday, it needs to go out on a Tuesday. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I would lose
But that's also you being in recovery because when we say we're going to do something, we do it.
Right.
You know, like flakiness is like, that's not allowed.
Right.
You know, because like basically you're fucking lying if you say it's going out on Tuesday and it doesn't.
And then it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But during that whole time I was like, okay, I am a perfectionist, but you know what? That's good because I was a lazy person that couldn't keep a job. So I would rather be someone that's like obsessed with my work and obsessed with my studio and like a workaholic, whatever, and a perfectionist than, you know, someone that doesn't get anything done. But I love you so much. I don't know what I would have done without you over these years.
No, but that is how recovery works.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like Debbie gave me the greatest gift that I could ever, and this is something that frustrates me kind of because, and I've told this before about how what she gave me was like worth more than $1 million. Like nothing, you know, it's priceless. And I like go to meetings and I'm like, or even at work, I'm like, dude, it's $1 million. Do you want $1 million? And they're like, that ain't a $1 million.
Right. Yeah. No, that's totally true. Or somebody that like you want to start taking through the steps and they don't want to. It's like you're saying, I'll give you $1 million. Yeah. And someone is saying, no, thanks.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. It's totally true.
It's kind of a lot of work for $1 million.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
But she gave me this gift of sobriety, and like
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to do is give it to someone else.
Yeah.
And like, and that's, you know, and you're through this podcast, you're giving it probably to millions of people. And
Not
it's-
millions, but
whatever.
hopefully one day millions.
Whatever.
Thousands. Thousands.
Yeah.
I mean, we have like a lot of down, you know what I mean? If you look at it over the years, you know, there's a lot, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. And one of the things, like at Steve Brigard's funeral, there were so many f***ing people.
Yeah.
And they were like district attorneys and people that were still f***ing strung out on dope.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, like he made an impact on all those people. And
Yeah.
one thing that he told me is like, you never know how much of an
Yeah.
impact that you're going to make.
Right.
So you just do your best.
Yeah.
Just do your best.
Yeah. I heard that I heard once that your legacy isn't like a building with your name on it.
No.
Your legacy is the way that you made people feel.
Yeah, I am Maya Angelou again.
Yeah, exactly. For all those kids on bento. But like, so for Steve, his legacy isn't even really choices. I mean, it is, but it's also all of those people that he helped.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for helping me.
Thank you for having me.
I love you.
Love you.